Developing demographics definitely point out that India will remain a young nation and the largest contributor to the global workforce over the next few decades, an outstanding strength compared to increasing elderly population in the Western countries and that in China owing to its own child policy. Further, since the age group of 40 to 60 years is the key contributor to the household savings, India's savings rate, which is increased rapidly in the last decade, will get a further boost, thereby supporting investment. However, the shrinking percentage of young people mean that the future of number of workers may insufficient to finance the pensions of retireds. The increasing senior population relative to working age people has implications for the care of seniors. Child dependency ratio are the statistical indicators which reflect the overall burden of a society. According to statistical practice, dependency ratio refers to the number of persons aged below 15 and are those aged 65 and above per thousand persons aged between 15 and 64. Based on the population census and other statistical data, and the Census and Statistical Department regularly compiles dependency ratios. Investopedia explains child dependency ratio is an indicator gives insight into the amount of people non-working age compared to the number of those who are working age. A high ratio means those of working age and overall economy face a greater burden in supporting the elderly population. The dependency ratio measures the percentage of dependent people, that is not of working age, divided by the number of working people. Number of children, that is 0 to 15, plus the number of pensioners, that is above 65, divided by the number of working age 16 to 65. In other words, the dependency ratio measures the percentage of dependent people not of working age divided by the number of people of working age, that is economically active. The young dependency ratio includes only less than 15 years and the elderly dependency ratio focuses on those above 64. For example, if a population of 1000, there are 250 people under the age of 15 and 500 people between the age of 15 to 64. However, the dependent child means any child other than abused or neglected child who is under improper care, custody, control or guardianship, that is not due to an intentional act of the parent, guardian or person exercising custodial control or supervision of the child. The ratio is the percentage change of one factor to the percentage change of the other related factor. Child dependency ratio can be explained with a formula. Thus, the child dependency ratio is the ratio of the population aged between 0 to 14 divided by the number of people aged from 15 to 64 and it is multiplied by 100. The old age dependency ratio is the ratio of the population aged 65 years or over to the population. All the ratios are presented as the number of dependents as per 100 persons of working age 15 to 64. Thus, the trends in the working age and dependent population just presented to determine the trends in dependency ratios. That is, ratio of the persons of the dependent ages to those of working age. Sometimes the dependency ratio can be named into the old age dependency ratio. Total dependency ratio. It is published international statistics. The dependent part usually includes those below the age of 15 and above the age of 64, or it is a measure showing the number of dependents aged 0 to 15 and over the age of 65 to the total population aged 15 to 64 and it is multiplied by 100. Or it is also referred to as the total dependency ratio is normally expressed as a percentage. of the youth demographic dependency ratio is the ratio of the youth population to the working age population. The senior demographic dependency ratio is the ratio of seniors to the working age population. The age demographic dependency ratio is based on the age rather than the employment status. It merely reflects on the population structure and the contributions made by the people classified as dependents. Between 1971 and 2006, the total demographic dependency ratio fell from 89 to 60 dependents per 100 workers. Stability of the total demographic dependency ratio throughout the 1980s and the 1990s was attributable to a decreasing youth demographic dependency ratio that was offset by an increasing senior demographic dependency ratio. As the ratio increases, there may be an increased burden on the productive part of the population to maintain the upbringing and pensions of the economically dependent. Thus, results in direct impacts on the financial expenditure on things like social security as well as many direct consequences. The youth dependency ratio would be 50% if they found 250 divided by 500. The total dependency ratio can be decomposed into child dependency ratio and the age dependency ratio. The age demographic dependency ratio is based on age, gender than employment status. Age dependency ratio are measure of age structure of the population. They relate to the number of individuals that are likely to be dependent on the support of the others for their daily living, youths and the elderly to the number of those individuals who are capable of providing such support. The key indicator of the age dependency used below rates the number of individuals aged less than 20 and of those aged 65 and above to the population aged 20 to 64. World Bank 2010 says age dependency ratio by country as of 2010, Japan and Europe had high age dependency ratio compared to other parts of the world. Two other indicators are youth dependency ratio for the individual aged less than 20 and the old age dependency ratio for the persons who are aged 65 and more, both calculated relative to the number of individuals aged 20 to 64. These ratios provide information about the demographic shifts that have characterized economically OECD countries in the past and that are expected in the future. Authentic or effective dependency ratio looks at the ratio of economically active workers compared to inactive. The effective dependency ratio does not just look at the age profile, but whether people are economically active or not. For example, many people aged 16 to 65 are effectively economically inactive, such students, people on sickness and diseases, long-term unemployed youth who are looking for the work, early retired mothers or fathers looking for the successive children at home, etc. All these people are young, they are not the economically active population. The unemployed are still counted as economically active if they are actively seeking work. However, if they have given up looking for the work, then they are counted as inactive. Similarly, some people over 65 may still be working. The definition of economically active is not always clear cut. Example, a part-time worker over 65 is something of grey hair or old person area. In the Western world, we are seeing the increase in the dependency ratio because the population is living longer, thus is creating an increase in the number of people over 65 and higher dependency ratio. This term dependent child generally refers to the child who has been placed in the legal custody or either of the state of the country promote care system by the courts, usually due to neglect, abuse or neglect of the child by its parents or other caregivers. When you throw an added complexity that is inherent in require matters, the whole system can seem to be quite discouraging. But no matter what is the role you play, it is important to understand the system is as a whole. Everyone involved in dependency matters as the same goal. The long term health and safety of the child or the children is in question. The goal is most likely to be achieved when everybody within the system is working together effortlessly. The pattern in the dependency ratio is very different in India. At 46.6 people under the age of 15 for every 100 of working age, India's 2010 youth dependency ratio is nearly twice that of China's 24.4. India's youth dependency ratio is decreasing slowly in recent years and is projected to continue a slow, steady decrease in the near years. India's old age dependency ratio is projected to increase slowly over the steady period, but the rate of change will increase over time. Thus, child dependents are those who are aged below 14 years, those not fully created people unusually dependent on their elders for the survival. However, in some countries children are hardly dependent but actually provide an income for their families. Age dependent members are those at retirement stage, usually agreed over 65 years, who are dependent on others. State funds as generated by the economically active for their support. Often the elderly are dependent more on their own savings or their children than financial help from the state. Economic dependency is an unending situation in which countries, economies and economic agents dependent on each other and a variety of different economic and non-economic factors for an economic and non-economic reasons. Population dependency. When a country has a high number of children, it is said to have a youthful population, but when a country has a high number of elderly people, it has an aging population. A sizable share of seniors aged 65 or older and children and youth younger than the age 20 are likely to be socially and economically dependent on working age Indians, and they may put additional demands on the health services. The demographic dependency ratio measures the size of the dependent population in relation to the working age population who theoretically provide social and economic support. Changes in demographic dependency ratio highlight the changes in the age composition of the population. Child dependency assistance is needed because the child has no parent, guardian or custodian responsible for care or supervision. Child dependency assistance or placement is needed because a parent, guardian or a custodian is unable to provide for care or supervision and lacks an appropriate alternative child care arrangement. The parent or guardian's inability may be due to physical or mental illness, substance abuse, developmental disability, arrest or natural disaster, and may be temporary or permanent. The parent or guardian inability may be due to the child's extraordinary needs such as severe illness or disability. Child dependency assistance is needed to analyze a number of social problems. A high dependency ratio can cause a serious problem for a country if a large proportion of a government's expenditure is on health, social security and education, which are most used by the youngest and the oldest in a population. The smaller quantity of people of working age, the smaller number of people who can support schools, retirement pensions, disability pensions and other assistance to the youngest and the oldest members of the population, often considered the most vulnerable members of the society. Nevertheless, the dependency ratio ignores the fact that 65 plus are not the necessarily dependent. An increasing proportion of them is working, and that many of those of working age are actually not working. Alternatives have been developed, such as economic dependency ratio, but they still ignore the factors such as increase in productivity and working hours. Worries about increasing demographic dependency ratio should thus be taken into action. The dependency ratio is important because it shows the ratio of economically inactive compared to economically active. The economically inactive under 16 and over 65 also tend to be bigger recipients of government spending, for example, education or pension and healthcare, etc. An increase in dependency ratio can cause fiscal problems for the government. For example, Italy has national debt of over 100%. A doubling of the dependency ratio is going to cause difficult choices for government to formulate. A high dependency ratio can cause serious problems for a country if a large population of a government's expenditure is on health, social security and education, which are most used by youngest and the oldest in a population. The less people of working age and less people who can support schools, retirement pensions, disability pensions and other assistance to the youngest and the oldest members of the population, often considered the most helpless members of the society. Nevertheless, the dependency ratio ignores the fact that 65 plus are not necessarily dependent. An increasing population of them is working, and that is, many of these working age are actually not working. Alternatives have been developed, such as the economic dependency ratio, but they still ignore factors such as increase in productivity and working hours. European countries of the dependency ratios are expected to rise at a faster rate. Not only are there an increasing number of people over 65, but also a decline in the number of people who are working age. In Italy, for example, the number of workers aged 15 to 59 is expected to decrease from 35% to 21%. This will lead to a higher dependency ratio. Labor market implications. Higher dependency ratio could lead to labor shortages as firms struggle to recruit sufficient number of workers. Firms may have to respond by encouraging older workers to stay in workplaces. There may be an increase in semi-retirement where the older workers stay in work part-time or supplement smaller pensions. Economic implications. A higher dependency ratio is likely to reduce productivity growth. A growth in the non-productive population will diminish productive capacity and could lead to a lower long-run trend rate of economic growth. If the government fails to tackle the issues relating from a higher dependency ratio, there could be an increased pressure placed on the government finances, leading to higher borrowing on higher taxes, which also reduce the economic growth. Steps taken to support children in India. The state government and the national government are bringing excellent changes for the most marginalized children by providing them with immunization and nutrition, ensuring that they have a chance to join formal school. Exposing and preventing explorative child labor practices and running prevention programs during the emergencies. We provide emergency supplies as well as the children are protected in the safe places as well as continue schooling, etc. to actively save the children in India. It is a multiple problem which can be tackled by the involvement of entire society. Child labor exists as long as social and economic disparities continue in our country. Roughly 30% of Indian families are living below the poverty line and another 20% is barely making hand to mouth. As eradication is not possible in nearer future, we can concentrate our efforts on earn and learn through open school system. The education is neglected in rural areas only for boys and girls or both. So, the government's Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan all children education program is in action since 2001, especially for the children in rural areas, under which every child should be educated and they have the right for their education. Under the program, the Indian government provides uniform, midday meals, books, stationery, etc. are free to the children, so that poor children can also be educated. The Balika Samriddhi Yojana in 1997 is one of the most important initiatives of the government to raise the overall status of the girl child. The Yojana aims change family and community attitudes towards both the girl child and the mother. Another major initiative in 2005, Government of India also announced free and reduced cost of education for girls. Those with 2 girls and no other children were promised discounts of up to 50%. Other beneficial schemes include the Adolescent Girl Schemes, the Child Survival and Safe Motherhood Program, the Universal Immunization Program, specially health checkups schemes for the primary school students, introduction of health cards in selected areas, evolution of health programs, midday meal scheme for primary school children and nutrition, education, etc. With the help of the above discussion, it is clear that problems with a youthful population in India, much of India's population are under 16 years old. So, it has a high dependency ratio.